Chapter 1966, Blood Corpse Tree King 3. In the Blood Swamp, a ferry boat quietly drifted on the black waters of the river Styx, ignoring the chaos ahead and the earth shattering around it. Boom! Something terrifying was about to appear in the fog. The deafening roar was the sound of the earth breaking apart, and the blood swamp was torn apart by something. Then, a massive shadow erupted from beneath the ground, shooting straight into the sky. It was a mountain peak, towering majestically into the heavens, rising thousands of meters into the clouds, standing tall and unyielding before everyone. As it grew too immense, even the mist of the blood marsh could no longer obscure its form. It was like a mountain peak, a gray-brown pillar. Sharon stared at the huge pillar in front of him, narrowing his eyes slightly. The usual gentleness and simplicity in his eyes slowly disappeared, and a hint of madness slowly revived. It was the exhilaration of encountering a deadly threat. In the next moment, the huge mountain peak rose from the ground and came crashing down towards the area where everyone was standing. The mountain collapsed, giving off an aura of destruction. Sharon put down the oars, rubbed his hands together like a gymnast, then stood up straight and bared his teeth. "All right, come on." Boom! The 1,000-meter-high mountain collapsed with a loud bang and crashed into the small ferry where Sharon was standing, but Sharon did not flinch or dodge. Instead, he raised his arms to block it. In the blink of an eye, the two collided violently, and the mountain crashed into the swamp, splashing bright red liquid everywhere and splitting the earth open with a long crack. At this point, Cardalus and the others had already fled a long distance away. Seeing this, Canelo was a little worried when he saw that Sharon was completely pinned under the mountain peak. That guy is alone. Can he really deal with such a monster? After all, that is the lord of the netherworld. He looked at Cardalus. "Should we go help him?" Cardalus heard Canelo's words but didn't turn around, his eyes still fixed on Charon's location. He gritted his teeth, as if he were a wild cat that had encountered its natural enemy, in a state of high alert. "Help him? Are you crazy? That guy is a devil who fought his way out of the Abyss 51 alive. When he goes crazy, he destroys everything around him. Do we want to die?" Canelo was taken aback for a moment, then fell silent. Charon's identity was too mysterious. In the past, only a handful of people in Colombia knew of his existence. In the 3 years since the end of the world, he had never appeared before the public. Canelo only knew that the Natural Science Association had designated him as the most untouchable being. If it weren't for Brian's unreliability and the fact that the money mogul Adam Smith was busy dealing with matters on Mars, he would never have let this guy be the team leader. After all, he should have remained in a mental institution for treatment. Boom! The mountains collapsing onto the earth erupted with a deafening roar. Crack! The sound of breaking could be heard clearly, and a moment later, dense cracks like a spider web appeared on the entire mountain. Then with a boom, it was blown apart from the waist down. Sharon jumped high into the air and stood on top of the half-broken mountain. He looked down at the mountain and saw huge wooden fibers on it, and a strange smile suddenly appeared on the corner of his mouth. But when he looked up again, the clarity in his eyes had completely disappeared, replaced by an evil darkness. Sharon seemed to have turned into a different person. Boom! 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 The roaring sounds rose one after another, and more huge mountains appeared in the mist. They were all plants, trees that grew here. To be precise, they were all just parts of a single tree. Sharon raised his neck and looked up at the sky. At the end of the sky, he could vaguely see a huge shadow hidden behind the mist. It turned out that the blood-red canopy covering the entire space was not the color of the space itself. It was the canopy of a huge tree. This space was composed of a tree so huge that it was difficult to imagine, and its size was beyond comprehension. The blood color in the sky was the corpses hanging from the branches. With the appearance of the giant tree, the blood-colored corpses also revealed their true form from the clouds. They covered the sky and spread across the entire sky. When Canelo and the others saw this scene, they all stared wide-eyed, unable to imagine in their wildest dreams what kind of hell could have produced so many corpses. Hundreds of thousands? No, even millions. Even the almost immortal vampire soldiers stood with their mouths agape, staring blankly at the sky. Is this an ancient super battlefield? Why else would there be so many corpses? Some of the corpses above were human-shaped, some were beast-like, and some had broken wings growing out of their backs. Canelo thought of Columbia's internal information, took a deep breath, and exclaimed, in order to seal the Drucker Titans, every era would experience extremely bloody and cruel battles. The losers would have their entire race wiped out, and even the winners would have to pay an extremely heavy price, only to temporarily seal it away and gain a chance to catch their breath. These corpses are all the fallen of that super war in ancient times. It was this endless pile of corpses and flesh that had fed and nurtured an unimaginable monster. Lord of the Netherworld, the Blood Corpse Tree King. The entire blood swamp is the soil that nourishes it. Billions of years of growth have made it so huge that its roots spread throughout the entire space. Even a single root is as huge as a mountain. The Blood Corpse Tree King was hidden in thick clouds. With just a wave of its branches and leaves, it caused a violent storm, finally clearing the clouds and allowing people to see its true form. It was so huge that no matter how far away one was, one could clearly see its existence. It was so big that it was like looking up at a god, and one couldn't even think of fighting it. It was so big that it was despairing. Canelo and Cardilla's souls were trembling. They couldn't imagine how humans could fight such a terrifying creature. To completely kill a tree, one would have to remove all of its roots, which would be equivalent to destroying the entire world. This. Cardilla stammered, unable to say a word. In his heart, there were only two words: it's over. Chapter 1967, Pluto. Canelo stared blankly into the distance at Sharon, who stood in the blood swamp, proudly raising his head to look up at the Blood Corpse Tree King. The lives of everyone depended on Sharon alone. But could he do it? Sharon raised his head to face the huge creature in front of him, but there was no fear on his face, only solemnity and coldness. He seemed like a completely different person compared to before. No, he was definitely not the same person he used to be. The fairy of the river Styx slowly glided toward him. At his feet, black waves surged forth like thick ink, swiftly spreading outward and staining the surrounding blood-soaked swamp. Soon, vast stretches of the swamp turned pitch black. That was the river Styx, the path by which the souls of the deceased returned to the underworld. As black as ink, as viscous as paste. Within this vast mass of paste, one after another, bizarre shadows suddenly rose, twisting and gradually growing to the height of a person before slowly taking shape. 1, 2, 3, 4. A woman and 3 men. The woman's body was completely shrouded in a black cloak, her features indistinguishable. The 3 men looked different. One was a bald, tattooed man with a face like a poisonous snake. Another was a young man with flaming red hair and eyes burning with rage. The third was a handsome man with shoulder-length hair and a face like a sword. They stood on either side of Karen's body. Although their expressions were different and they looked completely different, their eyes all had the same gleam. Sharon, the ferryman of the Styx, Nyx, the goddess of night, Hydra, the 9-headed serpent, Ceres, the 3-headed dog of hell. Styx, the god of the underworld. When these 5 appeared together, a hazy ball of light rose up between them and slowly transformed into the form of a child. It was an innocent child with blonde hair and light blue pupils, wearing suspenders and exquisite little leather boots, clutching a rabbit doll tightly in his arms. His pure face showed some childlike innocence, but he was cowering, as if he was extremely afraid of the whole world around him. Only when the 5 people protected him tightly did he get a moment of relief, and the fear in his eyes dissipated. Cardillus, Canelo, and the others watched everything from afar, stunned. They didn't understand why their leader had suddenly turned into 6 people. But suddenly, Canelo seemed to understand something. He pointed at the 6 people over there and said, "I understand, I finally understand. Why is his code name Pluto, but since we first met him, he has been acting like Sharon. This guy is schizophrenic. Now, we can officially introduce the leader of the Columbia Able troops. He is the most powerful member of the Natural Science Association, and even the Columbia government is constantly on guard against him. Pluto John Heisenberg. His real age is only 10, which means that the child is his true self. Heisenberg was born in the restricted area of the Abyss number 51 in Columbia. 10 years ago, a group of top scientists led by Professor Da Vinci conducted an experimental project called the Heisenberg Project. Many years ago, Columbia had already discovered the secret of the existence of an underground civilization. They established 2 large experimental bases to communicate with the aliens. One of them was the world-famous Area 51, and the other was the Downey test site. The underground civilization transferred some of their powerful weapons and technology to Columbia, allowing the country to quickly dominate the world a century ago. The Heisenberg Project was an attempt to combine human genes with the genes of the underground life forms to create a new human race. The people created in the project were called the Heisenberg Orphans. In order to test whether they could adapt to human society and accelerate human evolution, these children were subjected to numerous social experiments. Most of them died in the laboratory before they could grow up. In subsequent social experiments, a significant number of individuals were humanely destroyed due to their dangerous behavior towards society. John Heisenberg was the last child to survive. Years of social experiments and extreme tests caused him to develop various personalities as a means of self-protection. Teacher, doctor, psychopathic murderer, prostitute, military officer, gangster. Every time he underwent an extreme test in his life, he would develop a new personality. After testing, he was found to have more than 2,000 personalities. The Heisenberg orphans suffered from schizophrenia, which was a phenomenon of great research value, so they were not destroyed, but became excellent research subjects. Until later, when the end of the world came. No one expected Heisenberg to display powers far beyond those of ordinary people. More than a tenth of his 2,000 personalities had supernatural abilities, which made his thinking even more chaotic, and many of his cruel and bloodthirsty personalities posed a huge threat to society. He made me realize something. At a certain time, in a laboratory in the Vale district of Franklin State, Professor Da Vinci took a big gulp from a wine bottle and complained to Brian, who was skillfully operating mechanical tools with dog paws. So it turns out that a person's body can really contain so many different souls. In essence, this is a redivision of the self-awareness within a body. This is extremely rare. Upon hearing this, Brian just rolled his eyes and said, "That's just a disease, isn't it?" "No, no, no. Brian, you don't understand." Da Vinci muttered, walking over with a drunken look on his face and putting his arm around Dog's shoulder, explaining, "People who don't have strong enough mental strength would have already collapsed and died after enduring such torture. Not everyone can split into more than 2,000 different characters. He must have extremely strong talent." Burp. You can think of it as, many people sharing the same body. That's why he's so powerful. Like a monster. In the end, the various personalities within Heisenberg gradually became aware that they were sharing the same body with others. So they began a brutal internal battle.